welcome. This is the Shearing Wheel podcast. Today we have Don Paul. Hello, Don.
Hi, Sean. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Don and I are old friends
Yeah,
for decades.
Decades.
In Maryland, your partner. We were having cookies and tea just the other day.
yeah.
Got invited over, which was fun. And Don is a writer, a poet, a birder. Would that
Oh,
be
yes.
correct?
You could have put that first.
Also does bird calls, which I know.
We won't be doing that.
Okay, no bird calls today. Next, we'll get you in again. I've done we haven't done it in a while, but did a lot of talent shows, and
Yes.
and that was one of your
That's true.
one or
of my
two times.
One of my many
yeah,
times.
yeah. I think
Bird
you've
calls.
read. I think maybe you read too. You also educator, teacher, just
Retired from teaching at Montserrat College of Art. It's a wonderful place to teach. Little group.
I told a person this morning at Kid Dreams, Alex, not sure of her last name, but she went to Montserrat. And I'm like, I'm interviewing Don Paul. She goes, oh, I know Don Paul. Yeah, yes. He was, she had gone to Montserrat. So yeah, and I would also add a humorist to your resume. Have you heard that one?
No.
I think you're very funny. I think you have a great sense of humor.
Great.
Yeah,
That's probably
yeah.
the biggest compliment I've gotten in a while. It's good.
I love it. And Don's has been published in anthologies and journals and magazines, and also residencies you've had like in Vermont.
Yeah, Vermont Studio Center and place out in the West Coast,
Really?
Oregon.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. How do they work? Like, do they give you like a cabin for?
It really varies.
Yeah.
Some of them you get a cabin, or you might get a room in like a big dormitory type of place.
Right. Yeah.
And what you do at most of them, in fact, probably all of them, simply you bring your work and you've just got this time to write. They supply the meals. There's really nothing
Just-
much else to do. You might do a
Yeah.
reading or something like that. but
Right.
You just, get up in the morning, it's like, all I have to do is write. So it's heaven.
Nice.
A little scary sometimes.
Yeah,
but
yeah. I've never done like anything. Also, a graduate of Goddard College,
Yes, proud graduate.
a proud graduate, as am I.
Yes,
Love Goddard in Plainfield, Vermont.
yes.
Graduated in the hay barn. That's
yeah,
where
me
the
too.
graduation was. That was a lot of fun. Sadly, it got sold. I think got sold the college, but not sure. And Don, you've been author of 3 books. The Country of Loneliness is sort of like a fictional memoir.
Yeah, that's a very good way of phrasing it. Mostly about my father, looking at his life.
Yeah. And also Still River.
Yes, that's a novel
Mhm.
and fictional. Very rooted in the natural. Enjoyed writing that.
As is your poetry. In the natural world, What We Still Don't Know,
Oh, that's, yes.
which Linnaeus, Carl Linnaeus, would the science of naming organisms.
Yeah, he's actually what Linnaeus said himself was he did not invent classification, organized it.
Oh, okay.
He was clear about that.
Yeah.
Sort of a God-ordained Linnaeus organizer.
Right. And he was like in the era of like 1700s, 1770s.
Yeah.
I think that was his lifespan.
Yes.
How did you come across Linnaeus? Is it through?
Trying to think what sort of kicked off for me that would be an interesting person. So yeah, what we're talking about here is like human beings are Homo sapiens, the Latin classification. And Linnaeus organized all of that, back in a time when you could do, because the world wasn't large. But and that people were, scientists were sort of looking welcomed it. So they worked with him to get all of this organized. And it's been, it's been remarkable that certainly there've been changes, things get shifted from one category to another, things come on, but basically the system itself is very workable. And what it did was give scientists a way of communicating, so they're always talking about the same living creature,
right.
Animals, plants.
Right.
By using the Latin, you're not favoring one culture.
That's a fascinating subject, and so you're a nature writer, whether it's in poetry or prose, and you've been working on a book on the Great Marsh.
Collection of poems about the Great Marsh.
Now, what did birding bring you into that realm?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
The part of, excuse me, Brian here. The Plum Island area is part of the Great Marsh.
Yes.
And that's a world birding area.
Okay.
So, we're sort of blessed to have that right in our backyard. Spent a lot of time.
Yeah.
Not nearly enough.
And so when did you decide to go, I want to, or have you always write poems about marshes?
I have not always written poems. I've always been a birder.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was like first grade, I had one of those, those opera glasses that you snap.
Yeah, sure. I used to spy on the birds when I was young.
I think my father had a pair or something, and so I kind of stole them, and I had a little notebook, a little golden guide to birds.
The birds are sort of poets themselves, right? I would, in a sense, if they're singing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what is being communicated, but you do hear it. And then what we spoke earlier, I had an interview last week, George Martin, who does plein air painting landscapes. And we had talked about his process of like finding what to paint, and that relationship. Does the setting find you, or do you find it? That kind of idea, or does the book find you, or do you find the book?
Well, I think the setting finds me, but I have to find the book.
So, and at some point, it would be fun to maybe, because George, we talked about a visual vocabulary that he uses to paint, and he's interpreting nature, and then you using words to describe, both interesting, different mediums, different. He has you have like the open page in a sense. That's the canvas of a notebook maybe, and then his being the canvas. And I did a quick sort of a research on just marshes in Massachusetts, and which is great. This is what's fun about doing these interviews is I get to learn something, you know. And I found out that my hometown, Situate, is known for its marshes, which I know, but how they would ditches.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I never thought about but marshes are cut up so that was like some of the earliest destruction, I guess, of marshes, and they were used for so horses could navigate, and it was like salt hay. Yes. And it was harvested for 250 years.
Yeah, still is.
Is it really?
Oh yeah,
Oh my
you
gosh,
can buy salt hay if you drive up 1A.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep.
Okay. And so and also a boat called a gondolo, which can haul 2 to 8 tons of hay. So that's like an enormous amount of hay.
Flat bottom boats, really.
Yeah. So that's again, a lot of destruction of habitat there. And also, just offhand, I remember there was like a hat craze in New England back in
Oh,
like
yes.
18,
Turn of the century.
yeah. And that also must have contributed to destruction of marshes, the killing of birds.
Yes, yeah, all the feathers. If
Yeah.
you look at sort of old drawings, and,
Yeah.
Women had these
Yeah.
hats with the feathers.
Yeah.
So sometimes, excuse me, the actual bird was stuck, stuffed.
Oh, my goodness.
And then stuck on the hat.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, and that did a lot toward almost eradicating.
Yeah, I think even seagulls were like,
Good heavens, I
yeah,
didn't know that.
rare, They're plentiful now.
Yeah.
Well, great. So, would you like to read some of your poems from the Salt
Sure.
Marsh? Yeah,
Brought a couple along.
cool.
So the first poem is the title of the poem runs into the poem. So
Okay.
I'll read it that way.
Okay.
To love a salt marsh in winter is to love the color brown, storm-ravaged creek banks, slick frozen mud flats, weathered rushes and reeds, is to love the sound of tide-jumbled ice chunks, clinking in flooded creeks, surf thrashing the beach beyond the huddled dune. To love a salt marsh in winter, face the wind, watch the horizon long and low as one lone harrier drops down from the empty sky.
Beautiful. Brings me back to the marsh.
Ah, good.
I spent a lot of time out there as
Yeah,
a
'cause you
child,
would have, yes.
in the woods.
Yeah, I didn't really have experience with salt marshes until I moved up here as an adult. And yeah, they're just sort of wonderful places.
Yeah.
They're very wide open, and a lot of wildlife, and they're wonderful in winter. The poems I brought, I have a collection that's 50. I've brought some that are particularly about winter.
Okay.
I think people don't think of being out there in winter. It's kind of harsh, but it's also very beautiful.
Yeah.
This one is called Stopping by the Marsh in December. Dead low tide, creek too shallow for boat propellers, not a place most would choose to walk, no paths, no cars along the road that runs between dunes and marsh. Wide views of winter-brown cordgrass, pale sun, no clouds, not even a gull in sight. If I had 6 hours of time empty as this winter sky, I could stand and watch the tide creep back in, steadily lift the skiff tied to the dock below, finally overbrim the creek, drain again. Out on the barrier beach, the tide has begun to turn, booming against the sand, higher with each wave. Here, the stern of the skiff is already floating.
Lovely. Yep. Again, transporting me to the marsh.
Yeah, most of these were written from notes that I took. I was walking. I mean, since I moved to this area, one thing I loved is that I was that much closer to Plum Island, in particular, that part of the marsh.
Yeah.
It's closer, and started spending a lot more time after a while, just wanting to celebrate what I was.
Yeah, yeah. While listening to your poem, I can actually get smells from the marsh as well.
Wonderful.
So it's interesting how you use your words and they become vehicles, in a sense, for the reader to put themselves there,
Yeah, make it your own.
Yeah, yeah. So it's fascinating. Another.
If you've been up to Plum Island during the winter, some years you'll see snowy owls, and they're hard to miss. They're huge, and they'll be perched up on some old sign or a post or something. And every once in a while, further up north, they'll have a small rodent population crash, and so then snowy owls will come down seeking. So you don't always see them, but some years we do. Snowy owls. The snowy owl is not tethered to place. If winter food grows scarce in the far north, it will rise up from the Arctic tundra and float on its wide white wings south to New England, until it spies a place that is flat, open, empty, a place like the Plum Island salt marsh, where it will find a perch, a signpost, or an old broken piece of driftwood, and stand solitary, feathers riffling in wind-driven sleet or stinging snow, and feel at home. So if you get a chance to head
Yeah,
up to Plum Island.
I've heard, yeah, up around the Crane Estate, they hang out around there, or?
I've mainly seen them up in the wildlife refuge, Plum Island
Okay,
Wildlife
yeah,
Refuge,
yeah.
because what they really love is wide open space. That's what they're accustomed to. So you generally won't, actually, I'm about to, wrong about that. I was about to say you generally won't see them up close, you know, out over the marsh. But there was a young one time, I don't know if you've been up to Plum Island, you drive through the refuge on that one road. And there was a young snowy owl on one of the dunes right next to the road, and it just was looking like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, my God.
It's very interesting. So you can, once in a while, see them up close. So a lot of my poems do feature birds. I've been a lifelong birder.
Yeah.
A bird, this poem is about black scoters, which are seabirds, kind of sort of looking like ducks in a way. They're about that size. They're black, as you would expect. And you'll see them sort of in the waves sometimes.
Okay.
You'll see a black bird about this big bobbing around out there, usually a little flock of them, and they're probably
Scoters.
Even here, black scoters. The trail through the dunes opens out to the beach, where the sea is rough with piles of white caps, smashing and breaking, beach strewn with black windrows of kelp and Irish moss, torn from the seabed, driven up onto hard, wet sand by a sea gone mad, wind screaming from every direction, tearing white spume off waves and whipping it into long, dirty piles of froth along the tide line. Even here, black scoters swim and dive, coasting up and over the tumbling waves, sliding down into troughs, at home.
I grew up near a marsh, and there was a woman named Polly Litchfield who would hunt for snapping turtle in the marsh, and use you know, cook it, use the shell, shellac the shell, sell it. But yeah, no, that your poems are it's funny, right? It's making me think about my hometown.
Good.
Yeah. And the Scoters, is that how do you spell Scoters?
S-C-O-T-R.
Okay.
Those names that I think must go back,
Yeah.
you know, to a sort of older forms of.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's
Right,
the case,
right.
but it's not a word.
Yeah.
We're out there.
I'll have to look for them now that
Yeah, if you see a little dark bird going up and over the waves, they're rugged.
Yeah. So I've noticed like the ducks do seem to come in closer in the wintertime. They're more visible.
Definitely. I think we're seeing more of them because they're coming down from.
Okay.
Even here in Beverly, if you go down to the water, which we're not far from right now.
Yeah.
You'll see different seabirds there and ducks that are coming in because they're being driven down from icy places.
Yeah.
So they're looking for the open water.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of our old friend Ernie Baroni. Who used to carve ducks.
Yes.
Ernie since has passed. But yeah, carved ducks, geese.
Yeah.
I think our friend Karen has that one in her living room there. So yeah, no, it's interesting. We're thinking about my Situate and Ernie Baroni.
Yeah.
He turned me on to trash picking when I moved to Beverly, early 90s, I guess.
Yeah, you were taught by the best.
He was like the Michael Jordan of trash.
He was. God
love him. Yeah, but like.
I've just got. one more here.
Okay.
I didn't expect to do a big read. And there's not a lot of color out on the marsh at the time of year, like a lot of browns, grays, some kind of, but so winter berries, by their name, we know that, notice them in the winter, they're bright reds, they really stand out. So this is called winter berries. They catch my eye in this monochrome world of heavy bottom clouds billowing in from the east, over a sunless ocean and withered trees, leafless on this January day. Winter berries, scarlet clinging to pale gray branches, weighting them with their glorious numbers. They seem to be waiting for what will fly down to devour them, a flock of cedar waxwings, or even late-season robins finally making their way south, to spread their redness ever further into the dunes and swales and scrubby woodland.
Well, thank you, Don. That, on a cold day like today, you brought us out in nature, but we didn't have to leave the building.
Yes, you don't have to be out there in the wind. If you think, if people think they're seeing robins, they are. I know they're the quintessential, spring bird. They come back in spring, and then they go away. And but actually, they sort of move not with the calendar, but with the weather. And
Okay.
I've been seeing robins around, and I think what they're doing is they're starting to move further south.
Okay.
So if you think you see robins on your lawn, you are. January.
And is the cardinal a year-round bird?
It is.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When I was a child, you never saw a cardinal. I saw my
Really?
first cardinal in Maryland. I was thrilled. I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
And they've been steadily moving north. I
Okay.
don't know if it's change of weather or if just, population shift.
Okay.
And so you'll see them year-round.
So the cardinal wasn't always, as you said, not always around.
No.
Oh, no kidding, huh? We have some cardinals in our yard. That
Yeah,
interesting how they come around. They come around at interesting times,
they do. They're very regular.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, they'll come around, they'll make you think of someone, or maybe it was past or something like that, Birds are interesting, right? Messengers, in a sense.
They can. They certainly can be. There's a lot of lore about birds.
Yeah.
Kinds of birds. They're an animal that we really live with a lot.
Yes.
Most of us are not living with bears or lions or things like that.
No.
But, birds everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, if you had one land on your windowsill, you wonder, like, what's going on? What's up? Well, this has been awesome, Don. So great to talk to you and hear about your marsh poetry. Are you how far are you into your project, or just is something that it's done when it's done, or do you have like a schedule for it, or?
It's kind of done when it's done, and it's done.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh, right.
I have
right.
50 poems. I thought I'll
Okay.
quit there.
Congratulations.
And the next part is the hard, not fun part, which is getting it published.
Yes. Yeah.
Individual poems have been out there, but I'd like to see it as a book. I think it's interesting.
Sure.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so that's my next project
Yeah.
is to sort of
Okay.
get them compiled and
So all edited, ready to
they're
publish in
ready.
a sense. Yeah.
as I
Wow.
said, some of them have been published. I'd like to see them as a
Oh yeah.
book because it's very seasonal.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
a nice book.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, art seeks an audience, right?
Yeah.
So it's I can't wait till it comes out, and if it comes out, to have you back on.
Great.
Dive
nice.
deeper into it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Sure. Pleasure. Cheers.